Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our educational part of the festival. Today we have with us a Hungarian director and animator Luca Tóth. Yes, thank you very much for being brave enough to come here. We're going to talk about how to create a good 2D visual. So just after the session, we will have Q&A. So make sure you prepared your questions in advance. And yeah, you can, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, by the way. It's not just, you always thank us for coming, but we're really thankful for being here and being so nicely welcomed. So as you can see, my name is Luca Tóth. I'm a Hungarian animation director. Mostly, as a director, I mostly work in my own short films, but I also work in other commissioned fields, like I work for Budapest Pride or other human rights NGOs sometimes, or for festivals. I try to put my visual essence into any work that I do, even the ones that are not very personal to me. I work in the 2D field. I'm more into the drawing, painted kind of things, but also working digitally as well. And I was thinking about giving you a masterclass about how I think of 2D imagery, what I think character-driven 2D visual needs to have as an essence. So in many ways, I'm not just going to talk about my own process. I'm going to talk about inspirations that I've seen, that I have throughout the years, knowledge that I gathered throughout the years about the 2D image. So let's get started. So what makes a good 2D character? That's the big question. What makes a 2D character that is good both on paper and both on in animation? As animators, I think if you are all... How many of you are 2D animators? Okay, so quite a few. So you must know that sort of divide, that sort of conflict between having a drawing that has a sort of soul, that has a sort of depth, and translating that drawing into something that is easy to animate, that is movable. You can give out to the animator, and they can easily use it. So there is always this conflict, I think, between the animatable object and the drawing itself. And there is also the question, or not even question, the thing that I'm always searching answers for is what is the sort of background, the sort of landscape that can support that 2D character, that can really help the character to have that sort of soul. Because I think in 2D animation, it's especially the background is very often part of the personality of the character. So this is a typical example of what the original picture would look like and what the animatable picture would look like. Of course, in one case, there is like a lot of detail, a lot of shading, a lot of pencil work. And in the other case, very simple lines, geometrical shapes, not easy, but easier way of looking at the character. And yet still, hopefully, or that was my aim, still have some sort of soul to it. In general, I think when I think about animation, is what I mentioned so far, thinking about how you can translate an original drawing into something animatable is very important. But at the same time, I think it's also very important to work in different fields where you don't think about that. You think in a different logical way other than animation. For example, I do wall rugs and ceramics, and in this case, what you see on the page, these are drawings on paper. I think people have a different way of thinking when they draw in paper. For on one hand, you don't have the undo button, so you actually have to really engage with your drawing. And at the same time, if you are doing something wrong, if you are ruining your picture, you can always have the chance to save it or to ruin it furthermore. So I think that sort of philosophy or way of thinking really helps proof your drawing. But I also do, as I said, zines or how did you call it today? Someone called it journals. Journals. It's like artists who do magazine kind of things, but for like an indie quality or an indie version of it. This is a zine called Zina. It's made by Hungarian ladies. It's an anthology, and we always have like short comics in it and illustrations, and they're always topical. So what I like about this is that I can prove my drawing style. I can think about very short stories, but the logic of, for example, printing in Riso print or Riso. Okay, it also like helps your mind to kind of exercise in a different way. I'm always waiting for the translator to finish. I'm hearing. I also try to do book illustrations and editorial illustrations. I find it to be also very moves my brain differently, or just print art in general. So that's about me. What do you think makes a 2D character good? Actually, what do you think what is missing? Sorry, what is missing from a 2D character? If you think about the soul of it, what is missing from it? What does live action film has that animation doesn't? Anyone? Yeah? There was one emotions solution, depth. What about the visuality of it? What is missing? Yeah? What? Volume. Ah, okay. These are all good thoughts. I like them. In a visual sense, yeah? Of the character. Mm. Mm. Sorry. Everything. Should I repeat? I will say it quickly. So, what the form of the character is the difference in animation. So that it is easy to animate, you have to think about the shape of it, the form of it, the turnaround of it, rather than in live action. So these are actual real good answers. What I think about live action and how live action, what the strongest part of live action is showing the soul of the characters by two very important ways. One of them is the gaze of a person. You cannot ever actually repeat it in drawing. The eye, the energy of a person's eye is something that in animation, it's, in my opinion, impossible to repeat. And the other thing is, there's like really tiny motions, there's really tiny wrinkles and muscle movements of a face and body of a person that really suggest all sorts of feelings. We even detect feelings in a tiny shadow under an eye or on the forehead of someone. These things fill up a face with emotions, with vulnerability. Sorry, vulnerability. It fills them up with a soul. So what I was searching for the last decade that I've been graduated, that how do you give a soul to a drawing? In one hand, this is my drawing. In one hand, I think if you have a drawing, it's very often not the actualization of the drawing is lending the soul to the character, but actually the sense that how much effort and what kind of effort the artist has given to the paper. So, for example, in this piece, the shading, the long gestures of shading those pencil works, or on the other, the ink one, those sort of blotchy gestures which look like somewhat of a mistake. Those are things that are not actually the part of the character on the paper, but it's part of the character of the artist. Does it make sense? Okay, I'm trying my English. So, for example, this is an image of Pernille Kjær. She's a Danish artist. She's an animation artist and also a painter. What I really like about her art is that she intentionally leaves mistakes in her pieces. She even has like, on that little piece of gesture there is this cartoony start of character, and then she decided differently, and yet she left it in the picture. I think very often when an artist is purposefully allowing their mistakes to be shown, can give real sense of humanness to the image. I also think that this sort of like really precise, this is also her drawings, really precise, but also a bit of like childlike shades, and then the contrast of like blotchy, big colors. It's also kind of have that sense of stumbling, that have that sense of imperfection that suggests a sort of soulful creature on the paper. Sorry, I needed water. So I also think that symbolism of characters, the way you symbolize feelings or parts of someone's personality in a symbol can actually give way more character, way more soulfulness to a picture rather than live action figure. And I also think that the positioning of the body, the awkwardness of the human body or any sort of character's body can serve the same purpose. This is a film of... How many have you seen Old Fangs by Adrian Marigeau and Ellen Hawley? Okay. Go home and watch it. It's amazing. I will talk to you about it later as well, but this is the end scene of it. And even though the characters don't have this shaded pencil work of for a color, at the end, the last character who we see, the abusive father of a young wolf boy, he's really sad. He's really alone. He's this predator animal, and he's a lone wolf. But at the same time, he's very, very lonely, and his fragility is being really emphasized with this sort of shading, this sort of showing what I mentioned before, showing the actual vulnerability of the artist, if it makes sense. This is the film called Mind Game, which is, in my opinion, has one of the most beautiful sex scenes ever made in film, and without having any real nudity in it. The shift of style, the shift of not just, it's like jumping from basically manga to this like experimental painted visuality. It really shows this sort of roughness and like flourishing feel of what these two characters experience in this scene. How many have you seen it? Watch this as well. Oh, yeah. Oh, there is one, two. So, Mind Game. And the previous one was Old Fangs, like fangs. Why did I put this in here? Yeah. Sorry. I put this together quite some time ago, and I don't remember all the slides. So very often we think of characters that they are moving in a very precise manner. You know their turnaround, you know their facial expressions, you know how they gesture with their hands. But emotions and character can be felt by the change of the character as well. And especially in animation, you can really play with the idea of not having an actual character design. This is actually the art of Eamon O'Neill, or O'Neill, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. This is illustrations from Dilroy Mann. I wanted to show different aspects of how you give personality to a character. I really like that, for example, in his case, he plays with fashion all the time, and by suggesting some sort of subcultural group in his drawings, he's suggesting some sort of character as well. Unfortunately, I forgot the name of the artist, but in animation and in illustration, there is also a possibility to play with the body. Very often, the body itself has the conflict in it. The body represents the inner conflict of the character or their outer conflict. What we've learned in school, that there are these 3 types of conflicts that a character can have. The inner one, when they are battling something within themselves. The outer one, when they're battling something with someone else. And the communal one, when they are battling the world. And with the gesture of the body, or with the creation of the body, a lot of it can be presented. This is an animation drawing from Sarina Nihai. She's a Japanese artist. She was my classmate at the Royal College. And she also used the sort of blotchiness of of this character's face, the body image of this character, to show the inner conflict of the character. I wanted to show something more mainstream as well, just to have something other than indie things all the time. Oh no, you know what this is. Please help me. Yeah, Secret of Kells. Yeah, thank you. So this is character drawings from Secret of Kells. I think it's beautifully showing what geometrical way of thinking about characters can suggest their personalities as well. And I thought I would show you a modern version of that sort of geometrical thing as well, that is being used in more of a trendy today style. And last, I mean, this is not the end, don't worry. Last but not least, David Shrigley's drawings not only suggest that sort of vulnerability that I already mentioned before, but he's also, it's also suggesting some sort of childlike way of looking at the world, like with this childlike humor and childlike way of drawing in general. And that with that, we come back to this whole idea of the feeling of, the actual feeling is not going towards the character itself very often, but it goes towards the artist. You think about what that artist must be like to draw something childlike and honest like this. And that gives more power to the character than anything else, in my opinion. So, halfway through. Let's talk about background. This is a Monet. It's almost okay in color on the screen. If you look at it, if you look at it, if I look at it, sorry, I don't know what goes in your head, but if I look at it, I think of like a fresh summer, like something in June that still has wind, and the light is like not super hot, but it's beautifully hot, and you can sunbathe in it, and there is this hot yet comfortable weather in the countryside. I'm showing you this because I want to talk about light, and I want to talk about how the reality of our surrounding can translate into the drawn surrounding of a character. So if you see this, I'm thinking I hope you, I think of this as something that is showing a very natural lighting. And what sorry, my brain is foggy. So when you are in a natural lighting, it's very hard to spot something super dark or super white, because most things that are in the same environment are in the same light, in the same shade. So very often they kind of have almost mutual way of coloring. Of course, we can spot something like very light here, or for example, your trousers are very dark. But in general, things are in the same kind of shading. And in natural lighting, that can mean that if you would turn a picture, a colored picture, into black and white, it might look like a mashed potato, basically. Because, because what I just said. And even at times when you have Okay, it's not that vivid in here, but imagine it being vivid. Even at times when you have like a very vivid color, like a very obvious focus of the image, it's very often in the same shade than everything else. So why am I talking about this? I very often, when I try to create something that mimics life, or that is very surreal in one hand, and yet I want the audience to believe that it's a real place, it actually exists, I use this sort of thinking about lights and colors, that even though I very often use different colors, I use them in a very similar tone to each other. So for example, this was my film called Superbia. Now I noticed that the mouse was all over there for the whole time. And in this film, I created this film in which there is like a tribe for men, a tribe for women, and this is like in a whole huge landscape, like an imaginary landscape. And yet I wanted the audience to feel that it is something real, that there is a real depth to these communities, even though they don't know all the details. So in that sense, I wanted to create that sort of reality-esque feeling to it, what I was just talking about, and yet having very unrealistic shapes and forms. This is also a scene from it. What I did in this film, I also created color script for it. I don't have it anymore. I always put everything in the trash after I'm finished with the movie, but I recreated with existing shots. In this case, I gave a very distinctive color for the female tribe, a very distinctive color for the male tribe, and those were like very clean colored, very spot on, almost like harsh colors. And then later on, when they were more integrated to each other, I used more washed out greens and kind of mixed some colors together. So at the end, it was, it suggested, it wasn't like a really strong, obvious way of suggesting a sort of journey for the movie, but I think having a color script can also suggest a sort of change in the characters as well. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. This is another movie of mine. This is called Mr. Mare, and I think it's gonna be shown tomorrow in a panorama section. I also wanted to have this sort of feeling that that there is this real life environment there, but I was very much playing with the idea of having some very detailful, very realistically shaded colors, even though the colors are not realistic, but the shades are, and yet having very simple lines, very simple shapes next to it, having a sort of breakage of the thing that you expect to see, and then the things that kind of shift while you are watching the film. Yeah, the same goes here. The same by meaning there is this. What did I do? There is this like very realistic shading, and yet the background patterns are completely out of reality sort of shapes. This is just one example. If you really think about having a film that has a color palette that is very, very important to you, always put when you create the background, always put the scribble of your character's colors into your painting or drawing, because they always have to be, how do you say, like matching with it. If you don't put it there, very often you can create 200 backgrounds and realize at the end that none of them works with your character. So this is an example of how I did it. It doesn't have to be looking good. You can just do it with this, in an ugly way. And one more thing about this natural lighting. I wanted to show examples of when I put a texture and some sort of lighting or shading on the top of my drawings, how much it can bring the paintings together. So this is the end result of one of my drawings, but without putting the lighting, shading, and texture on top, it looks like this. So it's very generic, very, I would say, it feels like it's made on a computer. The same goes with this. This is the same film still. If you take off all the lights and textures that hold them together, it becomes very ugly. This is not my film, obviously. This is Miyazaki Hayao's movie. I wanted to have an example of having natural lighting. Oh, this is washed out a little bit, but having natural lighting that shows the example of not having too much of a darkness and too much of a whiteness to it. So in the original painting, this part is very pink, and this pinkness reflects very much onto the clouds as well. So actually, the drawing, other than the mouse that I moved here again, doesn't have any white to it. It has, every inch of it has like at least a pinch of pinkness. This is also from Secret of Kells. This is I put this example in it because I wanted to show it that they really created a very natural palette, a very natural looking shading and coloring, and yet the geometrical part of it really elevates the storytelling. Yeah, so the film that I told you to watch, Old Fangs, it was when I was a student at the university. I saw it and I was really impressed by it ages ago. And it has a lot of natural lighting and beautiful colors. If you watch it, you will sense many slight stylistic changes in it, and every stylistic jump has its narrative purpose. Yeah, I just put this picture in it because I wanted to show if you have actual blackness in your drawing, which tries to mimic real life lighting, then it helps if you create a sort of image that has parts of it that's barely you can barely visualize what there is, because it's like starting to miss some details because of the darkness. So in this film, this boy, this young wolf goes back home into the middle of the forest with his two friends to meet his father again, even though he cut ties with him. And his father is a predator animal, but this boy chosen a different life. And as he walks up to the house, as he walks into the house, there is this very strong shift of style, which is, I think, perfectly emphasizes the character's inner state of mind, but also the fact that inside this house there are different rules than outside. Not only the landscape, the scale is more 2D. It becomes more cartoonish and more flat. But it's also the colors. The colors are very harsh, and even though it's yellow and black and red, it really suggests that sort of shift of mindset, that shift of that inside this house there is this very black and white way of thinking, and outside the house there is this very vivid, very changing, very colorful way of thinking. What I didn't mention the previous time when I showed this picture was not only the shading that is suggesting at the end the father's vulnerability, but also the positioning of the body that I also told about, that is he's already almost like growing out his own house in his depth of sadness. In he's really pushing away everyone around him. He's very abusive, and yet he's very, very sad and lonely. I'm gonna have a few more examples, and then it's over, you guys. I just wanted to show some other images that are, in my opinion, very excitingly suggest the inner journey of a character and having some sort of interesting styles to it. This is Igor Kovalyov's film. I'm sure you know him. Yeah, I know. That's why I said. And what I like about his films is, although he lives in LA or something like that, right? Okay. So he also has this very natural lighting in which the shades are somewhat on the same level. But he also has this beige film thing that in the 80s and 90s the live action directors had as well. I don't know if you've noticed, but we had a lot of brown films in those 2 centuries, which was also purposeful, of course, because they really have this sort of feel that they all joined up together. They are really in the same environment, but I find it very charming and also inspirational that it even translated into animation, and it gives a different depth to stories because of that. This is a picture from a father and daughter made by Michael Dudok de Witt. What I like about his films, he often plays with symmetry. He often plays with mirroring of an object, and yet he always shifts it. So when you are watching a drawing or a sculpture or anything like that, and you sense a mistake, like in that image as well, what I told you about the Danish painter who leaves her mistakes in her paintings. If you sense something that your brain wants to correct, your brain starts to fiddle, your brain starts to play with it, it actually gives a more engaging creation. So he's always doing this very gentle way of having symmetry, having something very much measured, and then faulting it. The same goes with the more modern example. With Michael Frey's films, he very often plays with patterns. And the same goes with the pattern. If you see a pattern that's being shaken, you see a pattern that is being ruined, your brain automatically engages with it more. It wants to fix it. Yeah, why? I think I had a reason why I put it in here. This is a Hockney painting. I think why I put it in there because there is this there is this mixture of texture, mixture of pattern, and it's also something that really moves the mind. Hopefully that's why I did it. And I think I just have 2 more images. This is oh my God, he was my classmate as well, and I don't remember his name. Nicolas Menard film. What I like about his approach and what makes the image very dynamic is that he does this, on the one hand, this very overdone, over-explained, over-shaded, very, very realistic, very beautifully precise parts of drawings, and then having like very clean, very easy, very geometric 70s characters in it, which really provides that sort of contrast that you, in some ways, I think if you're creating a 2D image, in some ways you always have to search for that contrast. Like, what is that makes it alive, really? And this one last example, because I wanted to show. This is a futon by. Oh no. Okay, this is the futon film. I wanted to show an example in which it's not the contrast, not the 2 worlds meeting in the visuality that provides some sort of personality to the image, but actually she's always doing this very slow, very precise, very gentle movements. And very often just the touching of a piece of food or a leg or a toe meeting water or anything like that is so slow and so gentle that it really suggests a sort of really intimate sensation. So it's not necessarily just harsh contrast that can serve as a personal touch on a drawing. So, that being said, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Luca. Do we have any questions? Everyone who has a question, raise your arm, please. Only 1? 2, okay. 3, good.
Дякую. Okay, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very informative. I enjoyed it very much. It answered a lot of the questions I had. My question is, when you draw the characters and it's time to give them like the color palette, is it a good idea to give them the same colors that are present in the environment they're set in, or is it a better option to give them more vibrant colors than the background, or more light or more dark than the environment they're in?
On one hand, I think you need to think of your character as, is this character fitting well into its environment? So what the relationship between the character and the environment, and then you have the answers of how much you want it to be kind of falling off from the color and how much you want it to have like harmony with it. So that's on one hand. In general, I like to have some sort of complementary aspect to it. If you don't like very vivid films, I think it's good to have just a few tiny details with more vivid colors. For example, in the Mr. Mare, I think, as far as I remember my own film, the eye of the character was way more vivid than anything else he had. I think, but it's just a personal thing. I think that kind of gives a sort of almost like a tiny bit of shine to the character. Makes sense. But it's really a personal taste thing. Mm-hmm. For example, Malte's films, you saw, it was very, how do you say, like, almost like sun, the characters spent too much on the sound and they got faded a little bit, the paper. So it really serves his stories. So it really depends on what your storytelling is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the talk. I wanted to ask about your personal approach for character design. How do you start? What is like the first thing you do? Do you base them sometimes on real life references, or they're completely imaginary? And what comes first, characters or environments, or do they go together?
On one hand, I don't think I can escape mimicking real life. I always notice the people's like tiny little like funny wrinkles or their way of like holding their heads or something. I just automatically do that, but I don't usually draw actual people. Why I showed at the beginning these drawings. I think it's just a sec. What I try to, maybe I should have just jumped there anyway. What I try to do very often is that when I free draw, I have way better characters than when I actually want to draw something important. So that's why I think it's very important to sometimes not think about the characters and just have sketches over and over again. And very often my best way of thinking of a character happens when I have a phone call with someone and I'm just like doodling. The more stressful phone call, the better the doodling. And what comes first?
Environments or characters?
For me, characters, but it's very personal. I think also like sometimes I start writing and then when I get stuck in the writing, I start drawing, and vice versa. I think it really, all these things really depend on how much of your thinking is visual. I don't think there is a golden rule for it. For me, I'm really oriented towards characters personally.
Thank you.
Hello. It was interesting lection. Photon, it's made by Yoriko Mizushiri.
Thank you.
I also wanted to ask you about backgrounds. You spent a lot of time on background. It's a lot of details, a lot of colors, a lot of tiny textures. How you made textures? you scan some materials, and how you work with colors? Do you use some palettes maybe? There are a lot of theory of complementation colors in internet or something. You use orange and blue, for example, green and red, some contrast colors.
Yeah, well, for the texture, I like to have painted textures and I scan them, or there's also, you can download some for Photoshop to have this like beautiful watercolor brushes that you can use as like sometimes as a background. I think for me it's important when you look at one of my animations not to feel that they have the sensation that it was made in this and this software. I like to make it feel like that it could be on paper and yet it doesn't look like paper. You have this like I think if you know the software that was made by, it really ages the film very quickly because the softwares improve very quickly as well. So I like to make it as non sterile looking. Does it make sense? Sterile looking
not
as
perfect.
possible. Yeah.
Unperfect.
Having some sort of exactly imperfections of texture. About color, unfortunately, I don't have wisdom about color. I really go with what I feel yummy is. It's almost like food. You know that you realize that chicken with garlic and olive oil and some lemon and ginger will work well for you, and then it tastes yummy. It's kind of how I go with the colors. It tastes until it doesn't taste yummy. I don't stop.
Yeah, so your films is very like pleasure for the eyes. Like it's very, very nice. But were you working on the backgrounds after the animation was done?
No.
Before the animation?
I usually before, because I like to position the characters in the background. I think I found it more sensible. That's why I had that image when I drew the Mr. Mare character in there. That even though I don't have the animated character, I put their colors and shapes in there, so it would somewhat working with the environment.
And you never animate on paper?
No, we had to in school. Not again.
Thank you.
Do you animate on paper, by the way?
No, I hate it.
Okay.
I have an additional question because you talked about software. So what software do you use for your animations?
Oh, okay. I use TV Paint. Yeah. How much of it is broadcast? How much should I tell about what kind of TV Paint I'm using? I use Photoshop for the background, After Effects for the compositing, Premiere for the editing. I think that's it.
Okay.
Where were you studying?
I studied at Moholy-Nagy University of Art and and Design in Budapest, and I studied at Royal College of Art in London.
Okay, thank you.
Okay then. Thank you, Luca. Thank you everyone for coming. This is all for today here, but we still have some screenings going on in both halls, B8 and B12. So if you want to check it out, please do. And we are waiting for you tomorrow at the big networking event.